Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm your host, Kirk Witmer, and with me today is a gentleman who is not really a Coatesville native, but almost. He was born in nearby Sadsburyville. Please welcome Bill Scott. Nice to have you with us today, Bill.
Thank you, Kirk. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll try to give you as much information as I can about myself. I don't have a real important life, I don't suppose, except for to me. As you say, I was born in Sadsburyville in 1914, March the 5th. I didn't live there very long, but there was a kind of a little school that I attended, and just for a few weeks or months, something like that, and then we moved to Pomeroy. And when we moved to Pomeroy, actually it was what you called Russell's Mill. And
how did it get that name, Bill?
Russell's Mill? Well, because Russell's at one time had a mill right near there. Mm-hmm. And when we lived there, Miss Clara Russell and Bill Russell still lived in the house across the street from where we lived. It's just above Stottsville. Had a great time in Pomeroy. Attended a school there from the first grade right on up to the 8th grade. At that time we moved to Coatesville. As I said, Pomeroy was a wonderful place to live. Everybody knew everybody, and I still remember the teachers so well. My first grade teacher was Miss Helen Morrison. She lived on a farm out in Highland Township. And everything was wonderful. Nobody ever seemed to get into any trouble, but she just said if anyone had got out of line, stand in the corner. And they'd stand in the corner a while, and they'd be so embarrassed they'd never let that happen again. Yeah. Then that was the first and second grades were in one building. And then there was one other building, but it was separated in two parts. One part of that had the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, and the other part had the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And I went through all of those. And we had a good time there. We had time off for recess and for lunch, and we'd play baseball. There was enough space between the two buildings where we could play baseball and just have an enjoyable time up there. So Pomeroy was a great place. Then when we moved to Coatesville, I enjoyed every minute of it. Mm-hmm. We moved over to 1013 Sterling Street, and everyone there was friendly. Of course, it was right across from the park. And there were always things going on there, baseball games and just whatever, you know. At that time, Coatesville had a soccer team too. I don't know if they have any anymore, but they were very good, had a very good soccer team. Mm-hmm. And had an enjoyable time there. But as I say, it was a wonderful place to be. And of course, you walked to school. As a matter of fact, you walked every place you're going to walk. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in Pomeroy, I got a job. I had been down to the store at Stottsville, and I was walking home, and this man stopped in a buggy or a spring wagon, really. Asked me to get in. He said, "I'll take you home." So he took me on up, and then just as I was getting out, he said, "Would you be interested in working for me?" And he said, "I give you $2 a week." And I said, yes. I went in and told my mother about it, and she said, "Well, go ahead."
And what was he going to have you do?
I was going to work on his farm. Mm-hmm. I was going to do anything he wanted me to do. His name was Henry Carlin. Mm-hmm. And I had a wonderful time on that farm. I learned to do all sorts of things with the cattle, with the Horses, of course, I ride the darn horses. And as a matter of fact, he used to let me ride the horse into Parksburg to do some things for him. That was a fun time.
Bill, you mentioned the term spring buggy. For those viewers who are watching that might not know what that means, give us a better idea.
Well, a spring buggy is just a small, if you know what a buggy is, it just has springs on underneath, and it's more comfortable to ride in.
To give a smoother ride.
Yeah, give a smoother ride.
But it was horse-drawn.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes, horse-drawn, one horse.
Mhm.
Always one horse for a buggy. And my grandfather lived right there in Pomeroy also.
Mhm.
So he had a small place, and well, he had enough space there that he had a cow and a horse, and that cow was well, it was just everything to them, because he would milk the cow and bring it in. My Aunt Bertha lived there with him, and Aunt Edith. And he'd bring the milk in, and of course she'd skim the cream off of it and make butter. And there would be people around there who would come down and buy the milk. As I say, she'd make the butter out of it, and it was just a great thing. That's all.
So the cow was more than a source of milk, it was
Yeah.
also a source of income for the
Right.
family as well.
And then, of course, the horse.
Mhm.
He couldn't have done without the horse. If he had a garden there, and he plowed the garden, the horse pulled the plow and the harrow afterwards. And then if he wanted to, if he needed any feed from Parksburg for the horse or whatever, he'd hitch it up to the buggy and or usually a spring wagon, and go up to Parksburg and buy whatever he needed up there, and the horse would bring it back. And then he had friends up in Salisburyville that he liked to visit every now and then, so he'd toss the what do you call it, on the horse to ride on, saddle.
Mhm.
Toss the saddle on the horse and ride up to Salisbury and talk to his friend. And every now and then I'd ride up back on the back of the horse with him. It was an enjoyable time. Everything just worked out fine. Of course, as I say, the school was just about a 3-minute walk from their place where they lived. So after school, I'd always go over, and my job was to pick up some milk to carry home, see?
Mhm.
But not only that, but my Aunt Bertha always made junket. And every time I went over there, she would give me some junket to eat, maybe a little piece of some kind of cake, and it would be a very, very nice time. Had lots of fun, and it was Pomeroy was a good place to be.
Tell me more about your school. Do you remember the name of it and where it was located?
Well, if you go up to Coatesville and just you go across the bridge, across where the train runs under, you go down that long hill, and right at the bottom, turn right. And the first street that you come to there, the school was right on the corner. And it's a house now, people live there.
Mhm.
Then if you turn right there and go just, I just have to say 1 block, I guess, that's where grandfather's place was.
Mhm.
And he had, I don't know, maybe he had an acre there. But he grew everything. They had ever-bearing raspberries. They had, everything that you can imagine. There was always something you could go out there and pick. And that would be one of the first things I'd do. Going home from school, I'd go over to get the milk, and Aunt Bertha said, would you go out and pick me some?
Pick some raspberries.
Yeah. Or rhubarb, or, you know.
Mhm. One thing or another.
Yeah. There was always something to get out there. And
You told us that you moved into Coatesville in later years, and you lived on Sterling Street and walked to school. Which school was that?
it was right on Main Street.
Mhm.
I had a picture of it there someplace. It was right on Main Street, and of course, the school's still there, but you don't have any steps on the front of it or anything. It's, I don't remember what they call it now.
Okay, is this the one between 5th and 6th Avenue now? That
Yeah.
would be Carl Benner currently.
Carl Benner Elementary, that'd be it. That'd be it.
What are your memories of that building and the teachers?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. One of the things that you see, you had steps to go up in the front.
Mm-hmm.
The only people to go up there are the seniors. And so there'd always be a lot of fuss there because you'd try to get in, and sometimes you'd make it, not very often. And right in the building in the center, and then on the right there was they had taught electricity and things like that. in there.
Carpentry shop, yes, I
Yeah.
remember that. It was
Oh, the
referred to as the annex, I think, in the days that I
Well,
attended there.
One of the carpenter shop was down in the basement,
Mhm.
because that's where I went. As a matter of fact, I still have a rolling pin that I made down there. And I made it from my mother, and so I have it now. But everybody there seemed like all the teachers wanted to do was to teach you. And I never had an argument, I don't think, with a teacher. And my homeroom teacher was Earl Clipple. I remember one time, of course, that you had once a week you'd have a time when you go into the auditorium and they'd have kind of a little entertainment up there. And somebody in our class said, why don't we do that? Why can't our homeroom do that? And Clip said, I don't see any reason why I couldn't do it. So they said, well, what should we do? He said, it's your idea. You do what you want to do. And he said, if I can help you a little bit somewhere along the line, I will. Well, we put it on, and it worked out very well.
Do you remember what the production was?
Gee whiz, no, I don't. It was just that we had a lot of singing and things like that. I've always done a lot of singing, and still do, by the way. As a matter of fact, I have an engagement, I guess it's tomorrow. And they asked me to sing whatever I want to, except the second one they wanted to be Bless This House, because it's coming up to Thanksgiving. So I'll do that one.
Bill, if you would, give us a little more detail about the life of a high school student of Coatesville back in the early 30s.
Well, life there was wonderful. And one of the things that I got involved in there was the music, because I was in the Meistersingers, and we sang various places, and one of the places we sang was down in Wilmington, Delaware, and of course you didn't have any buses, so we went in private cars. And my Mary, who I later married, she was also in the Meistersingers. There wasn't any room for her, so she sat on my lap the whole way down to Wilmington, Delaware. And that was our first date. That would have been in about the 10th grade, and that was the only one I ever had, and we were married in 1934, and we were together for more than 65 years. She just passed away last year. But it was an enjoyable place. Our music director was Lawrence R. Ginter, and he was into everything. I remember one time he got me in the National High School Chorus in Cleveland, Ohio. And I said, and one of the girls there too, I forget her name, and I said, how in the world am I going to get out there? Because nobody had any money. You know, that was Depression. And he said, well, you'll go out, you'll ride out in my rumble seat, both the girl and I. And we did. And fortunately, it didn't rain or anything, so we went the whole way out to Cleveland, Ohio, in Rumbleseed.
in Rumbleseed.
And sang in the National High School Chorus. There were 1,000 voices, and it was in the Cleveland Auditorium. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. Yes. And everything that happened there, it seemed like the teachers were always looking for something for you to be worthwhile to be doing. And I enjoyed every minute of my high school time. As I said, I sang in that, and then later, of course, I got in the Washingtonians, and that's not related to high school, but I guess in that, and had an awful lot of fun there with it was the director was Bob McFalls, and he was a top quality person.
And if I understand correctly, the Washingtonians later became the Coatesville Choraleers under Bob's direction.
Yes. And it was fun to be in.
All volunteer,
All volunteers, yeah.
community-based organization.
Well, he would invite different people, but it was an involuntary thing. You didn't get paid anything or anything. It was just a fun thing to do. But you sang all over the place. He had all sorts of engagements for us. He was good.
Bill, you graduated high school in 1932,
Yes.
and some 60 years later, you wrote a little poem about that.
That's right.
I think it would be appropriate to take this time for you to share that with us.
Right. Well, it was we had our 60th reunion, and by that time, our president had passed away. His name was Hun Loomis, and so it was up to me to kind of get the thing together. And one of the things I thought would help would be if I'd write a poem. So I did, and I have it here. I call it Echoes of 32. Now these are some echoes of 32. They interest me, and I hope you too. Yes, 60 years have passed, but gee, it seems like yesterday to me. The principal, D. Edward Atwell. Many stories of him we could tell. The superintendent, Carl O. Benner. Teachers he sought, O superior tenor. For instance, remember Miss Alice Schrack? If you missed her for English, that was your lack. Unless you, of course, by Miss Sharon were taught. If so, to be master of English you ought. But we've just named two of that competent group. These teachers we also include in the group. Clipple and Webster each had a berth. Lawrence R. Ginner and Miss Gladys Worth. Then there's Muthart and Gladding, whose names come to mind, and of course, Rosa Lechner, one of a kind, Miss North and Miss Burke, and an awful lot more. If I included them all, you would find it a bore. The administration was good, it's true, but consider the class of 32. Our president, Alvin Hun Loomis, Joe Lamb, the vice president's post, Ethel Weiner, I know you'll recall, the secretary with the most. Finally, an officer who would always shine, our treasurer, Verna Ballantyne. Remember those days when Coatesville High on Main Street was located? Who then could anticipate it soon would be outdated. Since then, it's had an overhaul, complete change to the entry. No longer is it Coatesville High, it's Benner Elementary. In those days that we recall, the front doors had a sentry whose job it was to make sure that seniors alone had entry. Of course, at times, the underclassmen tried to crash the gate, but generally, after quite a clash, the effort met its fate. We all remember many things that took place way back then. Of all our friends and classmates, time and time again, we'd show up every morning, school books under arm. If fun had outranked homework, not without alarm. But in spite of all we failed to do, the teachers somehow coped. We always learned, in spite of ourselves, more than we had ever hoped. And at the same time, don't know how, strong ties were oft attained as we proceeded through the years and education gained. And that's not all, for I recall opportunities extracurricular. Meistersingers, band, and orchestra. 3 things in particular. League club, spotlight, or high Y. All of these humdingers. Opportunities for everyone, and so the memory lingers. Maybe those sports was your bag in 1932. Football, soccer, basketball, just to name a few. Maybe swimming, track, or basketball suited you the best. This is just a partial list. Our class was really blessed. 212 pictures in the old yearbook 60 years ago were taken. Photograph Delaney Folk for the old yearbook were taken. And 38 of our fellow grads are assembled here, that's right, gathered to eat and fellowship, a blessing that we might reminisce with schoolmate friends and think of days gone by, although we can't relive those days except in our mind's eye. Yep, these are the echoes of 32. They interest me, and I hope you too. Yep, 60 years have passed, but gee, it seems like yesterday to me.
Thank you, Bill. Well, that was back in 1932, and here you are graduating high school with the whole world in front of you and needing to find a way to make your way into that world.
Yes,
Now, you've already told us you were going to be married in 2 years.
Well, I wanted to be married that year. But when I graduated, I got a job at a store uptown. I got $5 a week. And my wife, who was secretary and treasurer for Joe Filaroma, who had the Coca-Cola place in Coatesville, she got $6 a week.
Uh-oh.
And we didn't feel we could get married on
$11 a week.
Right. So, 1934, minimum wage came in. There he had to raise her to $14, and I got a job at Lucan's for $14.28 a week. And I enjoyed every minute I ever spent with Lucan's Steel Company.
How did you start with them? What were you doing
I
when you
started out as a mailman and car checker. So you delivered the mail out through every place. And the nice thing about that was you got to know everybody in every department. And they knew you. They'd call you by your first name. You'd call them by the first name. Everything was great. Not only them, but the people that worked for them. I remember the various places. I used to love to watch them make the heads. Of course, they don't make anymore. But it was fun. They had an 84-inch mill. They don't have that anymore. So I delivered mail all through these.
Tell us what you mean by heads, because not all of us have a history with Lucan's.
Well, if you have a oil tank any place, you have something on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
They're heads.
Okay.
And we made the submarines. At both ends of the submarine, there was a head.
Mm-hmm.
We got $250,000 for each of those. And I asked one time why they didn't still have that flange shop there. I said because they don't use those heads on those things anymore. And a lot of the smaller ones, they can press them, so they don't do that. I was mailman and also car checker. And I would have to check every car that was in the 84, the 140, the 26, the Universal the cars that they had there. And then if they were transferred from one mill to another because they had different plates to load on there to go to the same customer, then it was $2.20 that the railroad charged them for that transfer. And the important thing for a car checker was to keep record of this, because if they would make that out to have it transferred and it didn't happen that day, they'd make that out again. And they'd charge twice for that, and they'd only move it once. And I remember I kept a track of that very carefully, and I'd saved over $200 in a year. And I went in to see my boss. I don't really want me to give his name or not.
That's up to you.
But I showed it to him, and I was so jubilant about this thing, and he said, well, that's your job. And of course it was, and it was an enjoyable time. As I say, I got to learn more about more people, and I learned a lot about the railroad, and I changed jobs from time to time. I ended up there making bills of lading. And so, of course, there again, it was important to know about the railroad. And, well, it was an enjoyable time.
How many years altogether?
I
with
was there for
Lucan's?
46 years.
46 years.
Yes.
And do you remember what your ending salary was, if I can ask?
I
bet
don't really.
bet it was more than $14.20.
Oh, yes, yes. It was, I was doing pretty well. But it was, I just looked forward to going to work. I loved it. I had about, when I ended up there, I guess I had around 7 or 8 people that answered to me there, and we were like family. As a matter of fact, my wife Mary would have them down every Christmas. We'd down by basement. I have it carpeted and everything up in Sterling Street, and they'd all come in. We'd have a meal there and having a lot of fun together. But that's why I think that's the way most everybody did. But you could get along with everybody. I had close relationship with C.L. Huston. He was the president, and the vice president, F.H. Gordon. Of course, they both went to the Presbyterian Church there on 4th Avenue in Coatesville, and that's where I went too. I was in the choir and everything. And I don't know, I got to know them, but they had nothing to do with me getting a job, because I didn't get to know them until after I had the job. But they were both wonderful, and Mrs. Huston and Mrs. Gordon, they'd have the choir down once a year, and they'd have a nice little get-together and give us some nice things to eat, and they were fun people. As a matter of fact, I sang at C.L. Huston's funeral. Yeah.
Bill, if you would take a moment to give us some of your recollections of the relationship between Lucan Steel Company and the community of Coatesville.
Well, Lucan's was interested in Coatesville. And now when you talk about Lucan Steel Company, I guess you're speaking about the management of Lucan Steel Company?
Well, I'm sure that there were other groups that came from the rank and file as well.
I mean, most of the people who worked there were Coatesville people. And so, of course, they were interested in Coatesville. But so were the Hustons. They were interested in the city. They wanted to keep things nice. I can't give you any particulars to the extent that they did, but I'm sure that they did. C.L. Huston, and he was just an outgoing person, just a wonderful Christian man, and you couldn't have a nicer person.
Bill, 2 years out of high school, you married your high school sweetheart and you set up housekeeping right in the middle of the Depression. Tell us about the problems that you encountered. I'm sure there must have been some.
Well, as you say, we had very, very little money. So we started housekeeping over top of Brunninger's garage up on 6th and Walnut. And I forget what they charged, but it was very, very little. So we had a bedroom and another room up over top of the garage, and then underneath the garage there was room there for a kitchen. And it was really a rather a nice place when we felt. But we didn't live there too long, and then we moved over to 8th Avenue and rented a place there for a very little bit of money, and then from there we moved to 18 Palmer Avenue. That's where Mary was brought up, and the house had come up for sale, and we were able to buy it. And so we lived there for a long time, and had an awful lot of enjoyable years there at 18 Palmer Avenue. I know it's an awfully little place and all like that, but we liked it.
Palmer Avenue is a street that's not going to be readily known by most of our viewers.
Well, it's just
as I remember, it's between 8th and Chester Avenue,
Yes.
above Olive Street, and it was
Well,
a dead-end
You
street.
go in right off of Main Street.
Oh, okay.
On that. It's just before you get to 8th Avenue, the street before you get to 8th Avenue. You go, just turn right, going east, and straight on the corner down there. But one of the interesting things was, with as little as we were making, first year we were able to save a little bit of money. And I think that was a good thing. We kind of learned how to do that, and we did that for all the rest of our lives. Always made sure that we didn't spend it all. We had a little bit left, and this was a good thing to happen. We had enjoyable times. When we first moved down there, of course, I had no car, and I was working at Lucan's, so you'd walk from 8th Avenue down to, well, you go in on 1st Avenue at that time, and then when I got in to Lucan's, I had a little bit of a walk there too to get to the building that I worked in, which is not there anymore. And then, of course, when you're finished, you had to walk home. I had lots of good exercise, but it worked out very well. And then when we left there and bought the place up on Sterling Street, and the place that we had was sold right quick, and we didn't get much for it. But it went quickly, and up on Sterling Street, everything was fine up there. We were in 1013, and in between 10th and 11th, the street was wider so that you could have parking on both sides, which is kind of nice. Because at that time, when we first moved there, I didn't have any garage either. And I hadn't even had a car very long, but it was a Model A Ford. I had a Model A Ford, which there weren't a lot of people that had cars. And I know the girls at work get me to take them down to Philadelphia, do the shopping there and things like that. And of course, I always took Mary along. We just had a good time. And it was a good car. Well, I can't imagine working with that today, because I didn't ever travel more about 35 miles an hour. I don't think you'd be allowed on the turnpike. But it worked out fine. We enjoyed every minute of it. That was a good place to live. And then from there, as I say, when we went up to Sterling Street, that was a good street. As I say, it was wider there, and every neighbor that we had was wonderful. The one neighbor on the one side was Sterling Wright, and I worked with him at Lucan's. And he was a little short guy, and what I remember with him every morning in the office, he would come in and he'd get down on his haunches and twist his arm like, and he said, "Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do." Now he said, "We're started, let's go." Oh, he
Driving his imaginary car.
Oh, yeah. He was a nice person. Everyone we had there, our neighbors, Dick and Helen Slider lived with us right next door, and well, everyone in that block for some reason was close. Charles Stubbs was very close, the whole Stubbs family.
It sounds like in that neighborhood at that time there was a great sense of community and teamwork among neighbors.
There was. But everyone seemed know everyone, and everyone was close to each other. We didn't have parties or anything like that, but it was just just a friendship that we had together.
If somebody had a problem or got in a jam, you could probably count on a neighbor.
Oh, absolutely, sure, yeah. Give help anytime. I often shoveled snow for a lot of people there.
Mhm.
And, yeah, it's a good place to live.
Bill, you've been very active in your church as well.
Yes.
What types of functions has that provided for you?
Well, I was elder, trustee, and just about every office that there was in there I had at one time. I even was a choir director for a while. And as a matter of fact, it's very interesting to find out how I became a choir director, because I don't even read music. And I don't know, I had some sort of a gift, I guess. But a girl by the name of Ruth Handy came to visit me one time. And she was a director of the choir at Upper Octorara Church, Presbyterian Church. And she came down to see me, and she said that she was in the family way, and she had been directing that choir, and she wasn't going to be able to do it, and would I do it? And I said, Ruth, I never directed a choir in my life. I don't even know anything about directing a choir. So I can't do it. Well, she started out the door, and she was crying. I told her, well, come on back a minute. And I said, well, I'll try it. So I went up, and I told him right offhand, I said, I never directed a choir in my life. I don't know what's going to happen here. Before I did that, I went over to see Lawrence Ginner, my teacher from high school. Mm-hmm. He lived near Westchester. I asked him about it, and he said, well, one thing, he said, you probably know more anthems than a lot of directors because you've been in the choir so long. So he said, give it a whirl. So I did. I went and I told the choir that night, I didn't have a bit of trouble at all. And it was just one of the nicest things that ever happened to me, because I not only directed the choir there, I directed the choir at Brandywine Manor. I directed the choir for a while at the Lutheran Church in Coatesville, and 2 or 3 other places around. And I had always told them, I'm your interim. I'm not going to continue to direct your choir, but while you're looking for someone, I'll fill in and work there. And that's what I did. And I don't know, I must have had it 6 times that I did that. And I enjoyed every one of them. Mm-hmm. But I did spend a lot of time at Coatesville with that choir. I had them for quite a long time.
Bill, let me ask you, as you look back over the years, what changes have you seen in the city of Coatesville itself, things that once were but are no more that we should know about?
Well, of course, I remember the time when if you wanted to buy something, you went up Main Street, and you'd have 2 or 3 places you could go to buy it, and you'd buy it there. Today, I don't think there's hardly anything that you can buy in Coatesville except for shirt talks. I don't know. I guess Lipkin's is still there, but it used to be that there was a Bronstein's down on the corner, and but on Main Street there were all kinds of places. As you can see, if you ride through, most of those places are just not anything in there at all. But every one of those had a store of some sort, and they sold, and if you wanted to buy something, then that's where you went. But of course, when the malls come in, people, you could go to the mall and park your car there, and you could stay there all day if you wanted to. But in Coatesville, if you went uptown with your car and you parked someplace, you had to pay the meter, and you better get back there in time to get your car or something. Well, you know, people wouldn't put up with that very long, so if they can go to the mall and let the car there and do that. I think that's what mainly the malls are responsible for the fact that the stores in Coatesville have lost out.
Bill, back in the 40s, during your career with Lukens, you got involved with the Lukens chess team. Tell us about those days.
Yes, they had a chess team, and Ray Marshall was had charge of this one team, and they had set up a meet with a chess team in Philadelphia, and he was minus a person. So he came over to see me and said, would you please get down with us? And I said, I don't play chess. He said, I'll teach you. So he came down to the house, and I had one lesson on how to play chess. So we went down to Philadelphia, and we played this Philadelphia chess team. And Ray said, now, generally you have your best chess man on number 1, and then your worst man on number 3. He said, I'm going to do it the other way. He said, I'm going to have you play on number 1, because then if our best men are down playing their worst men, we have a better chance of getting somebody beaten. Mm-hmm. So obviously I lost a chess game in a hurry. And I can still remember this fellow talking about it to me. You know, Mr. Scott, he said, don't you think on your third move, if you had moved your pawn here, or one of the other, if you would have moved it here, don't you think that would have been a better move? And I just said, yes. By George, it would have been. But it was quite a time.
And did they ever find out that you were an inexperienced player?
Well, they never found out, no. But I did then become very much interested in chess, and I did pretty well on it. As a matter of fact, the pastor at Coatesville Presbyterian Church, Dr. C. Hans Evans, used to come down and play chess with me, because he said I was the only one that really could play pretty good, and he enjoyed coming down and playing. So he'd come down Sterling Street and we'd play chess. It's a wonderful game, enjoyable game. And I taught my grandson to play it. He was up not too long ago, and we played, and he beat me.
He's been practicing.
Yeah, and I haven't been playing that at all. But it's a great game, wonderful game.
Well, Bill, I certainly want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today and share your memories of Coatesville. And in closing, I know you've talked quite a lot about your vocal career, and I'm wondering if perhaps I couldn't coax you into singing a song for us. Would you do that?
The one that I always like to do and people enjoy, I've done it I don't know how long I've done it, and it's one of the very few things that I can really remember. I should like, without undue reiteration of the ego, to explain how very hard I find it is to make my pay go round among my vulgar creditors. They're fearfully in debt, for I always have afforded anything that I could get. But I must say I've enjoyed the best of what there is in life. I've been lucky in my love affairs. I never had a wife. I can summon little interest in the dry affairs of state, and the businessmen who call on me are coldly left to wait. So every day is ladies' day with me. I'm quite at their disposal all the while, and my pleasure it is double if they come to me in trouble, for I always find a way to make them smile, the little darlings I've no doubt I should have married long ago. It's the proper thing to do, you'll all agree. But I never could find any fun in wasting all my time on one. So every day is Ladies' Day with me. It's a frightful thing to think of all the hearts that I have broken, although each one fell in love with me without the slightest token that my fatal gift of beauty had inflamed her little heart. And I found that some small favor always seems to ease the smart. A position for a cousin, or a loan to dear papa, or a dainty diamond necklace, or a pretty motor car. But I don't begrudge the collarettes or necklaces of pearls. All the money that I've ever saved is what I've spent on girls. So every day is Ladies' Day with me. I'm quite at their disposal all the while, and my pleasure it is double if they come to me in trouble, for I always find a way to make them smile. The little darlings, I've no doubt I should have married long ago. It's the proper thing to do, you'll all agree. But I never could find any fun in wasting all my time on one. So every day is Ladies' Day with me.